Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental. We are recording this on Friday, January 24th. It is Dan Lust. It is Mike Kravchenko. We're back, man. I like these Friday recordings. These feel special.
I know. We let the week kind of wrap up because so many times I feel like we were recording and something would happen. I mean, even 20 minutes after posting. And so the Friday feels good. I think it's a good wrap up of the week, and appreciate everyone spending probably their weekend with us.
Yeah, no, good stuff. I'll have a couple personal stories. Mike, we were going to record this at 2 and at 5, and then I have a call that might be at 4. I have a lawyer that I'm expecting to get a call from at some point between 3 and 5. Sometimes we got to squeeze these things in. Okay, so I started teaching this week at Pace Law School. I'm back at New York Law School with advanced sports law. So it's busy season. And then I presented this week at the Nassau County Bar. I think I can say this on the podcast. I won't say the name, but I was at we were representing a one of our clients at the United States Soccer Federation antitrust case. The NASL, North American Soccer League, is involved in a very complex lawsuit with the United States Soccer Federation and the MLS. And I was prepping on Tuesday. Was in court. Let's just say I don't. There's not really. We're not going to talk about it on the podcast because we're definitely not going to do that because I don't want to get in trouble. But it's just a case that people should be paying attention to. New York Times had some coverage of it. Front Office Sports, not our friend Amanda Kristovich or AJ Perez, but some big attention on. So yeah, very busy week, and this is coming off of my flu week, Mike, as you will recall, the flu game.
Yeah.
So this has been a nice return to work.
No, it's good. The flu game was great. And I feel like it was almost literally a flu game. I felt like that was a great episode. And yeah, we got some updates, I think, this week. So I'm excited to cover some of them.
So yeah, let's we'll do the roadmap and then I guess we'll figure how best to proceed. It's funny, we rarely back in the days of OG Conduct when I did not have billable hours, and we'll save that story for another day. But we were able to do like emergency podcasts. We would do 2-3 podcasts a week. We would live stream on LinkedIn and whatnot, and then obviously things get busier. I have more of a more, we'll say, I have my own clients I have to answer to, so I don't think they love if I'm doing live feeds and this and that. So maybe at some point we'll get back to it, but not for the time being. But yeah, man, we get the news of the Xavier Lucas stuff right before we're about to record. So we had, I don't know how many podcasts covered Xavier Lucas, but I know we were one of the first possible. And I did hear from Darren Heitner, who I know is listening to this podcast as well. And I think he thought our coverage was fair. I heard from him like first thing in the morning the next day. And then, as fate would have it, Wisconsin and the Big Ten have their statements out the next day, and we're off right now. Now we're kind of, and Darren has his tweets out there. Wisconsin's has their stuff out there. I don't think we've heard from Miami at the time of this recording, but this is setting up. And again, I don't, we're not going to talk about anyone's, what should happen, right? But we're talking about what, is I don't want to say likely, but Wisconsin, if you read their statement, is threatening a breach of contract action. And Darren, for his part, is saying, congrats, you have a breach of contract action. Like, he's still going to go play for Miami. There's still this lingering question, which, I know each side. Wisconsin's accusing Miami of tampering, and Darren is essentially saying that this memorandum of understanding, we thought it was a contract. Darren has now specified that what Xavier Lucas signed was basically, an MOU, not like a fully binding contract. That signing of that document shouldn't prevent Wisconsin from allowing him to transfer. So, I still have this lingering question of like, at what point is tampering not existent? I don't know. I don't want to be so technical. Like in this day and age in the NIL, you have to kind of work in shades of gray. But like we know it's not tampering when a player gets passed into the transfer portal. We know that. Now, hypothetically, if a school impermissibly didn't put a player in the transfer portal, is no school allowed to talk to that player? That's the kind of ongoing question. I'm not going to forecast the answer to that. We are seemingly from the NCAA statement very much a gray area, and I think our snap analysis seemed to be correct, that the NCAA was telling Wisconsin, hey, this is a you problem. We are not dealing with this. We are not, we're not trying to get sued here as the NCAA. So, that's why you saw Wisconsin in the Big Ten step up to try to fight fire with fire. So that's the update. We missed, if you're following this, and I know I have a lot of students that listen to this. Shout out my new students at Pace who I've told to listen to the podcast as well. I said this is there's pros and cons on both sides. You can see why Darren took that approach. You can see why Wisconsin took that approach, and you can see the negative as to both sides, right? And I'll say this just so people know we're covering it fairly. Like somebody at some point at Wisconsin had to say, hey, I would think, right? Like, hey, don't put this kid in the portal. We are covered by this contract. I'm not familiar with any other breach of contract case or preemptive breach of contract case, right? Because at the time they weren't putting him in the portal. He hadn't breached the contract yet. I haven't heard of any preemptive breach of contract case causing creating some allowance for someone not to be transferred. So both sides are, in theory, trying to create some level of precedent from my vantage point. So I think we covered it a lot from Darren's perspective last time. And hopefully we're covering it from Wisconsin's fairly as well. And then there's Xavier Lucas, right, who is he's done something that as when I've spoken to practitioners that deal with transfers in particular, I'm told this has been done before, maybe not on this grand scheme, but the fact that there's so much attention on this issue might make it more likely that there will be some formal response by Wisconsin, be it lawsuit and whatnot. I'll just echo what I said on the last podcast, Mike, and then I'll stop hammering on here. I think Wisconsin. I was of the opinion that Wisconsin has to send some type of response, even if it makes the students, it makes this Wisconsin look bad from a the student perspective. Like, hey, these guys are threatening to sue one of their own players. I think I didn't. Maybe they had to. Maybe that's not the right phrasing. I expected that to happen, which it did within the next 24 hours. It's another thing to send this loud message on social media. It's another thing to sue Xavier Lucas. And then also what they're seeming to do, petition Miami or was NCAA to pursue a tampering case against Miami. My short answer is good luck with that. There's not really been that many tampering cases in the NIL era. Granted, this is a new beast, and we'll see what happens. But I wanted to make sure we close that chapter. We closed the initial wave of news on Xavier Lucas. All has kind of been quiet over the last 6 days. But yeah, I view this as being the biggest story in the NIL space as of right now. And obviously, we have a big hearing coming up on April 7th for House.
Yeah, big time. And he posted, "Feels good to be home." I mean, he's fully there with Miami, and I think the one thing too that you mentioned is to go after tampering in this way would open a huge can of worms. I mean, it seems like everybody, Quinn Ewers, Smith now, like everyone kind of has these opportunities elsewhere. So even if it's not direct tampering, I'm sure that would open a whole other can of worms. So, yeah, not surprised with that. But, yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, the season just ended, so we have a nice long off season to get into the court and see where this goes.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll end with this. There are, I don't know how many times it happens a lot in the world that I work in, and I do corporate work, we do litigation work. It's a lot of times I'll say if you don't do X by Y date, I will do something bad. We'll send a takedown notice, whatever we need to do on the IP side, or we'll file this draft complaint in court. I appreciate the action, so to speak. No matter which side is the winning side here, for purpose of our podcast and my class, the fact that Darren very loudly was singing from the high heavens, we were playing chess and Wisconsin was playing checkers. Say what you want about the actual substantive analysis of the case, which I think we've done a fair job covering. How loud this is, I mean, the fact that I went to my pace school, my class today, and I said, show of hands, who here knows who Xavier Lucas is? And 10 kids raised their hand, and I'm like, okay, no one would know who Xavier Lucas was if this wasn't loudly being litigated. So for those, students and young lawyers trying to look about the space, this is a really interesting topic. And maybe there was a strategy. Sometimes, if you don't hear about my cases, it's because I use the thread of the media. I don't never really has to get there, but sometimes you need the thread of Twitter. So I know Darren's having fun. People are calling him a Twitter lawyer. I've definitely been called a Twitter lawyer in the past. Sometimes it makes sense. Darren's calculation, it made sense. And certainly now in Wisconsin's calculation, they think it makes sense to issue a statement and take this to the next logical level. We are here. We are here. Okay, so rest of the topics for today, and we'll try to keep this a relatively short episode. We are going to talk about conduct detrimental. That is Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. We're going to talk about Jabrill Peppers. Mike, do we have one more? We have one more topic we're sneaking in. What was the last one?
Yeah, that actually happened today as we're recording. The Utah Yetis, or what were going to be the Yetis, the Utah
Mm.
Hockey Club. Facing
Mm.
some issues with the name that they settled on, which was Yetis. So yeah, we'll
We
definitely get
like
into that with some trademark law.
we like name changes. We like relocation in this podcast. We like name changes. We've certainly done a ton of it over the years. So happy to do that with you. Um, okay. Reminder: podcast sponsored by Themis Bar Review, the top bar prep company in the entire galaxy. That is Themis Bar Review. Okay. Every once in a while, Mike, I think the last big conduct detrimental report, I think John Morant got suspended for conduct detrimental. There was once upon a time the Washington Commanders, the congressional report, which I think they called like the conduct detrimental report. So, conduct detrimental comes up every so often. You'd be surprised, but just as many people in the class knew who Xavier Lucas was than knew like what the expression conduct detrimental went. So, or was or is. Uh, that's good. Mike, did you know that what conduct detrimental was before you started seeing this as a sports law podcast? That's a real question.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a common thing on Twitter. I feel like probably mid 2010s. Just conduct detrimental to the team was always like the classic. Like a lot of the insiders just use that as a blanket, without giving the details like they do now. I feel like the insider game was a lot less detailed than it is now. But yeah, I feel like conduct detrimental to the team were a lot of why people were getting suspended growing up.
Yeah, I remember. Listen, I'm like way older than you, but like I remember the first time I'd ever heard of Terrell Owens was getting suspended for conduct detrimental to the team when he like failed to report to the Eagles, and there's this like really famous video of Terrell Owens doing like sit-ups in his driveway with like media surrounding him. Um, It's pretty sweet. I don't know, if you haven't seen it, you should look it up. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
But anyway, here we are. We're talking about another athlete getting suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. So I'm going to try to do as much of a background. Mike, you're going to keep me on my toes here if I get this background incorrect. Okay, you
I
ready?
got you. Hmm.
Ready for this assignment?
Let's do
Okay.
it.
So also small assignment for you. But by the end of this podcast, I want you to find, because we didn't prep for this, keep this in the show. Don't delete this. We need the Ipe Mizuhara sentencing details. I know there was an update. I missed that yesterday.
Okay, okay.
Okay, he's on it. You're on it. You're on it. I just did it in my class today. All right. And I said, we got to cover this in the show. So listen, behind baseball here. Okay. So Jimmy Butler, is no stranger to trade requests and doing outrageous things to get himself traded. Jimmy Butler originally plays for the Bulls, gets traded to the Timberwolves, has this epic story where like he went so hard on the other players in practice that like he needed to get traded. And then, he becomes a malcontent in Minnesota. They end up dealing him. He finds his way eventually to Philadelphia 76ers. He's unhappy there because they're paying Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons, and there's not enough money for Jimmy Butler. And then eventually he makes his way to Miami Heat and Heat culture. So this is where things get interesting. Jimmy Butler's been pretty, as far as we could tell from the outside, a pretty happy camper in in Miami. They've made the finals twice, right? They've certainly overachieved. Playoff Jimmy has been a thing. So why are we here? At least as the story goes, Jimmy Butler's playing in a game, maybe, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. And Butler, he has kind of, takes a hard hit in the game, and they think he's hurt. They're not really sure. And Butler essentially goes AWOL from the team for like a week, 7 to 10 days, right around there. So that's kind of weird, right? You can't it's okay. It's one thing to be hurt. It's another thing to like not be in contact with your team. So there's reports per ESPN that he's having some communication with the trainers. The front office staff is speaking a little bit to his agent, but it's not the normal level of communication between player um, and their team. And remember who runs this team, right? It's Pat Riley. Pat Riley is, Hall of Fame executive. He was a coach with the Knicks once upon a time. And heat culture is a thing. Like, it's everybody fall in line with Pat Riley. Like, you can tell a number of stories of however many athletes, like Dwayne Wade or LeBron, where they went to Miami and like they have to fall in line with heat culture. And heat culture is, pretty one dimensional. Like, everybody has to fall in line. You answer to the chief at the top. And between Riley and Spoelstra, I think Spoelstra is the longest tenured coach in the NBA. Like, they have a system in place. So we all kind of thought things were heating up, we'll say, no pun intended, in Miami. At the end of last year, I guess Jimmy had some crazy quote, and we're getting back to the present minute. But Jimmy at the end of last year essentially said something along the lines of like, hey, if I was healthy, we would be in the finals and not the Celtics. And Pat Riley gave some comment. This is the end of last year, like I'm sure one of the last press conferences of the year. Pat Riley's like, you can't say that unless you're healthy. And it was a weird shot back to Jimmy. And if you just look, Jimmy was very unhealthy last year. He wasn't really available to play. Fast forward, Jimmy goes AWOL. The Heat are not anywhere near, title contention, right? It's a long, long road to go for title contention. And I believe, Mike, you can correct me on this. Jimmy's first suspension is for how many days? Is it 7 games?
Yeah, then it was for 7 games. Started on January 3rd. He just actually returned just about a week ago. Did well in a couple games, and then suspended again here.
Yeah, not great. And, whether innocuous or not, he's being suspended for an additional 2 games, right, Mike? 2 games, dose?
Yep. Yeah, 9 total
2
games
games.
in about a month.
Right. And this one's a little bit different. It's not for him going AWOL, whether intentionally or not. It's him missing a flight. So now he's getting suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. So we're here, and I wanted to, okay, people know the story, great. What I wanted to talk about is, I'm sure we're gonna cover Jimmy Butler again. He's either going to get traded or not traded, either of which is an interesting story for us to cover. So, let's say, Mike, you're the general counsel, and this is we should frame this topic as a special, like, hypothetical lawyering armchair segment, sponsored by Dos Equis vodka. No, sponsored by nobody. So, okay, Mike, let's say you're the general counsel of the Miami Heat. Okay, Mike, he goes AWOL for 7 days, and then he has this thing, he missed the plane. So either way, right? Like, if Pat Riley calls you, Mike, and I have you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Pat Riley calls you, and he's like, "I'm furious. Jimmy's doing this. He's at it again. He missed a flight. I think he did it on purpose." What do you tell him your options are? I think from our vantage point, there's really like 3 options. But give me what your option would be. What are you recommending at this point?
Yeah, with the way the NBA goes, start getting a transaction immediately.
Okay, so you're saying trade the man at all costs, correct?
Yeah, he's so valuable, and the way the NBA moves now, yeah, I think today I would think that.
Okay, so in just like logistics, I guess the question is really, what do you do and what do you tell Jimmy you're doing? So in yours, I'm just going to assume that's what I think is what you're saying. Like, tell him you're trading him. Tell him you're trying to trade him as quickly as possible. He doesn't have to play another game in Miami. We want you just away from the team, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I would probably approach that.
Okay. So, what the Miami, which I think is okay, right? You can have a player sit out. Um, that's one certainly logical conclusion. The other one is what I think happened, and then we'll go over the last one. Is like, hey man, listen, you're sending a horrendous example for the team. By the way, Bam Adebayo, I didn't realize this. Bam Adebayo is the captain. It is not Jimmy Butler, so he's probably reacting to some of this, and he's, whether he missed a flight, like, I don't know, players don't miss flights and miss games because they missed a flight. Like, that's pretty bad, especially in light of everything going on, right? You can't you can't possibly allow that to happen. So they call Jimmy Butler and they say, listen, we don't know what we're going to do yet, but we have to send, with respect to trading you or not trading you, but we know that you're sending a horrendous example to our team, and we are not allowing a precedent to be set that this won't go unpunished. We cannot have players missing games with this heat culture. We can't have people going AWOL, and enough's enough, Jimmy. We're suspending you again. And we're not sure what we're going to do, whether we're going to trade you or not trade you. Okay, so there's that. Okay, that's option 2, which is probably what they did. And option 3 is do nothing. Just say, listen, Jimmy, come back. when you can, uh, you know, not really sure yet. So it's really like status quo. We're not really sure what we're going to do. Suspend you, but we're not sure what we're going to do. And the other one's like, listen, we get it. You point received, message received, stay home, and we're going to deal you. Here's the problem, Mike. Okay. You ready with this? Ready for this?
Yeah.
Here's the problem with option number two. Um, oh, I guess it's a problem for option number two and the option that you did, option number one. Like, you have now sent a message to all teams, right? Like, if you sent them home and said, stay away until we trade you, or you said, we're suspending you and whatever, which they did. The issue now is that you've sent this message to the league that like Jimmy Butler is not going to be playing in Miami post trade deadline. So sometimes you have a little bit of flexibility, and you could say, "Hey, Suns," and the Suns just completed this kind of weird trade where they acquired additional first round picks by trading an unprotected pick. It's a long story, but they look like the leader in the clubhouse to make the trade for Jimmy. And if they didn't get enough of a nice trade package, they would say, among a number of leverage points, like Jimmy's going to stay here and finish the season out in Miami, right? That's one leverage point. The other leverage points are, hey, if you don't up your offer, we'll trade him to this other team, which they still have. But you've certainly lost that bucket to say that Jimmy is going to stay here, right? You maybe can recover from the first 7-game suspension. You don't recover from two different suspensions in 2 days. Then you've made it clear that this has reached a level that is almost unheard of in sports to have two different conduct detrimental suspensions in 2 days. It's not like a 9-game suspension, right? It's, hey, you should have learned your lesson. You didn't learn your lesson, and now we have to teach it to you again. And this is a vet. It's not a rookie. And I don't think the Miami Heat can recover from this. And again, Pat Riley is much smarter than you or I when it comes to basketball transactions. But by taking this route and saying you are like you are suspended, and we're not really sure. I think whether they could avoid it or not is a different question, but I think they've really harmed their trade value coming back. It's very clear that this is completely toxic. So, Mike, what do you think?
I agree. It's I don't even know what to say anymore. I feel like this is an NBA issue every multiple times a season. It just changes players. So yeah, I don't know anymore what to do with the NBA and how their contracts work and how teams are really even reacting to things like this. So yeah, you got me stumped here.
Yeah, I mean, like the other point is like from a player empowerment perspective, like Jimmy has had no real career ramifications to doing what he did to torpedo the Timberwolves, and I think he left the Sixers on relatively good terms. Um, but
Yeah,
like
he
he found his way to
apparently
the Heat. God,
I was gonna say apparently he said he's open to everything but Minnesota in terms of trades. So
yeah, I think he has a limited
yeah,
no
say
trade
everything
clause,
wears
but
told.
like you got to open up if you want to get out of town. I mean, if anything, maybe they're applying more leverage on Jimmy Butler, because if they really now want to make up this leverage that they lost the leverage to say he's going to stay with the team. I, Again, could things change? Sure, but I really don't view that as likely at this point. They might have to have Jimmy publicly say he's willing to play for certain teams so that other teams know to get into the sweepstakes. I think he has. I'm not sure how many teams are on his allowable trade list, aka the that are not on the no trade list. Um, but yeah, man, I just Jimmy's later in his career, like maybe like primetime superstar Jimmy can get away with this. Like there was some stories that he, when they were in the finals against the Nuggets, that he was staying at one place while the rest of the team was at another place. Like he's been getting a lot of special treatment. So I think what Pat Riley is kind of saying, and this is probably true of a lot of law firm cultures, like if you're generating a ton of revenue for us, a ton of business for us, like, and you're really helping us win games, you can kind of get away with murder. And if you're not, and we're a mid-level team and we're not doing that much, you got to fall in line, or else you got to pack your bags. Uh, and the problem is that's exactly what Jimmy wants. So they gotta kind of embarrass him on the way out, which isn't great. But that's what we're dealing with, Mike. That's what we're dealing with here on Friday, January 24th. That's the lay of the NBA state.
Yeah, and he's very like there are so many. There are, I mean, a very, very, very small amount of teams in the NBA that wouldn't pay a pretty penny for Jimmy Butler even right now. I mean, he's still even at his, I guess, incline age, it doesn't matter. He's still doing so good. So yeah, I think someone's going to give up a lot of picks for him, and I think it'll work out for him in the end. As we've seen, yeah, like you said, player empowerment in the NBA. So I'm excited to see that.
Okay, that's playoff Jimmy. Um, Mike, you want to talk? I feel like I'm watching you. You want to do Jabril Peppers right now?
Yeah, I got you. There's actually been an update since we've been recording. So
Oh wow!
yeah, this is I actually was just got a little excited because there was actually an update to this. In October, Jabril Peppers was the safety for the New England Patriots. Yeah, has made his way a little bit around the league. I think he was a Giant, correct? That was the initial draft, and then just some controversy, and now to New England. He was accused of assault and battery following a dispute with a woman in Boston. So she claimed that he physically assaulted her during an argument that was through phone calls that she received from another man. Through that, he faced his assault and battery charges, and actually since we've been on, he denied all allegations, claiming that the accuser just fabricated the story in an attempt to damage his reputation and get some money and his career. And his legal team said there's just completely insufficient evidence to substantiate any of the claims. And there's inconsistencies within the accuser's testimony. So as of right now, January 20th. Oh, sorry, this actually happened yesterday, but they're reporting it today. The yesterday Boston jury acquitted Peppers of all the charges after deliberating on the evidence and the testimony. So they found that the prosecution had failed to prove the allegations beyond any reasonable doubt. So yeah, I mean, Peppers is expected to return back to New England, back to obviously it's the off season, but I would imagine they're still going to be setting up some training. They have Mike Vrabel now, so Peppers on the defense. There's a lot happening within New England, so yeah, he'll be back. And although they're saying that the NFL is still going to conduct their own review within their personal conduct policy to see how Jabrill handled all of it, from obviously just the initial accusation, and then I guess throughout the entire case. So yeah, I mean, it's just he's I guess moving on with his career, and hopefully you hope that something like this doesn't have super lasting reputational effects, but obviously a lot of people it does within the NFL. So yeah, he's back with New England and acquitted. So I think that's that's the big update with Jabril Peppers. But yeah, once a very high draft pick, a big deal in the NFL. Now with New England, who's gearing up to, as a Jets fan, it makes me sad, but probably look into taking over the AFC East from the Bills, in my opinion, coming up soon, depending on how Vrabel works out. But yeah, that's really
So
all we got out of the Peppers case.
well, you said some things about the Jets that we're gonna have to touch upon, but yeah, Peppers once upon a time was the main piece coming back in the Odell Beckham trade. So, yeah, Peppers was with the Browns, and then I believe Beckham obviously was the Giants. That was the deal. So Peppers has some ties into I don't know the New York football scene. So, yeah, man, like I saw this. I remember when it happened. I remember the story first broke, and I'm like, man, this is such a non. Well, I was going to say it's not a New England story, but then again, like you think about all the controversies New England has had over the years. This one hit differently. It was a little it was more sad, right? Because it's not the Brady era of Patriots. So when stuff would happen to the Patriots during that era, uh, people would pile on, right? But Mike, the jury acquitting him on all charges.
Yeah, yeah, he's good.
Okay, so Jabril is going to be back. I mean, good for Jabril Peppers. Like we always say it, we always try to caution. Like everyone's innocent until proven guilty. I guess we'll see what comes. We'll see what comes of the. I guess you and I are not going to talk to jurors. Those proceedings are supposed to be somewhat secret, but um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's. It's not certainly not what I thought was going to happen on day one. Obviously, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, but you can have your own thoughts. So speaking of jurors, I watched somewhat recently Juror Number Two. Mike, have you seen that the new Clint Eastwood movie?
No, it's new.
It's very new. It's very new. You
Okay.
never heard of it?
No, I have not. That's bad.
It's on Max. This is not a spoiler
Okay.
alert. This is in the trailer, and someone told me this. This is why I ended up watching it. Mike, what if you got called for jury duty and you got put on a criminal manslaughter case? Okay, and they're
Okay.
talking about the details of how this person died, and you're like, wait, I was at that bar on that night, and that's how I drove home. Oh my God, I might have killed the victim here. It wasn't the defendant. Now look at that face. That's the premise of juror number two. I don't say anything else. It's a Clint Eastwood movie. It's very good. And obviously, if you're on a jury, and your standard is beyond all reasonable doubt, you are this was a criminal case that was done. It wasn't civil. Like, and you know that the guy didn't do it, but all the evidence is pointing to him. You have this kind of ethical dilemma. What are you supposed to do? Blah blah. It's very good. That's all I'm going to say. It's very good.
Okay.
I thought after I was told, after I heard the trailer, I watched the trailer. I'm like, I don't know. This is probably going to suck, right? Like I basically know what's going to happen already, and it lived up to the hype. Like it was better. It was very good.
Okay. All right.
Everyone I've told this to has liked it. So Mike, have
Absolutely.
I ever led you wrong on these recommendations? Have I ever led you wrong?
No, definitely not.
Never, never. Okay. Last but not least, let's do the Utah Hockey Club, aka the Utah Yetis. Just kidding, not the Utah Yetis. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I actually made a dumb assumption, assuming that it was associated with the Yeti coolers, but it was not. It was the Utah Yetis are actually facing their obstacle. It was early in January when the USPTO actually issued a refusal for the Utah Yetis just because of likelihood of confusion with the other existing marks held by Yeti, which is what initially happened. But now we have a couple of other things that they have going on, as there's now an entrepreneur that owns a local Utah entrepreneur that owns the Utah Yetis. He's asking for a significant amount in damages, but 20 million in just
What's the
damages,
guy's name?
arguing. I cannot.
Is it Martin McCauley?
I don't know. I was
You
looking
don't
it
need
up.
it. There's obviously we dealt. OGs, the listeners will know that Martin McCauley was the guy that threw a wrench in the Washington Commanders' plans. I always find these people to be so
Interesting.
funny. So, Mike, this guy, some alleged trademark squatter, just guessed the name, and he's trying to screw with them.
Yeah, saying all of it obviously infringes on his IP and dilutes the value of. I haven't seen in any of reading any of this. I do when I read it, Ryan Miller of
Well,
KSL.com
we
was
don't
the
want to give the
first.
guy any free pub. It's probably on the USPTO's website, but we don't need to give the
Okay,
guy free publicity here.
okay,
Um,
okay.
but yeah, I mean, now we have a trademark squatter situation. Sorry, a textbook trademark squatter situation. I'm for it. I actually was with you. I thought the objector would have been the Yeti cooler. It was not. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, so they were initially in when they had first filed, they were one of the claimants, but now no, this is stemming out of a different individual entrepreneur, like you had mentioned, similar to the Washington football team situation. But yeah, I mean, USPTO is claiming that even with Yetis, it's just all identical. It could cause confusion, and I don't know. I mean, with Yeti coolers, for me, a big thing, if you do look at just Yeti coolers and like the logo for that and the Utah Yetis, it's pretty very similar. I mean, in the fonts, and it's going to be interesting to see now what they handle with the individual. Because yeah, these trademark squatters, like you said, I mean, just come in and grab it immediately, but the team already has gone almost all in on this Yetis thing. I mean, they need to, in my opinion, negotiate some sort of licensing or some agreement with him because, I mean, they did go all in. They announced it. I would imagine started printing shirts and doing all of those things. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this actually goes. The Utah Yetis was also probably the number one. I think it was voted number one, which is what they held. And I know a lot of people around, the hockey fans that I know are excited to see Utah Yetis. I mean, it's been some interesting names: Golden Knights, Kraken, the Yetis. So it's been a little bit of fun in the NHL, but Yeah, I don't know.
I was
Anything on this?
I'm not normally on hockey Twitter, but I did see there's a lot of discourse on the Yetis today. Um, but I saw, uh, again, I'll preface this is not a political podcast, but Trump's obviously throwing around executive orders everywhere. Some are getting shot down, and I saw one that went. I don't, somehow it found me in the feed, but that Trump has made an executive order to reinstate the Atlanta Thrashers. So obviously it's a joke. But somebody said in the comments, which is I thought it was so on point. They're like, the Atlanta Thrashers logo is basically Donald Trump's hair, so that makes sense.
That's
Do you ever see the
crazy.
Atlanta
That
Thrashers
is
logo?
very
It does
yes.
look like his
It's
hair.
good though.
It does look
It
like his
does.
hair.
It does. That's
Okay.
funny.
Yeah, man. Okay. Anyway, man, it is 4 o'clock. I told you I had to jump to this other call. Business duty calls. We snuck this in. Mike, all good. Listen, it is Friday. We're recording this again.
We need one
Let's go
more before
Buffalo.
you.
Let's
Real quick,
go Buffalo. Buffalo
we need
Bills plus
to
1.5. That's the pick.
it's Commanders in Chiefs Super Bowl. Go Commanders! But real
No,
quick,
it's not.
we did mention Ipe Mizuhara. I want to give you
Oh
the
yeah,
quick.
do
He's
it.
facing 7 to 10 years in prison for his embezzlement. I mean, of millions through player contracts. So the
What'd you say?
falsifying documents.
You said millions.
Yeah. I mean,
Wait, millions and millions. But keep going.
and yeah, they're going after him hardcore. I mean, 7 to 10 years. They're also, and I don't think this is really that unreasonable. It did really give some significant financial harm and I mean at least damage to baseball's reputation while that was all happening. And especially the league's biggest star. So I think that had an impact, and that's what they're really highlighting when going after him. His side is arguing for leniency because of the financial struggles that he was having, and he has a clean record prior to. But yeah, they're going hardcore at him, and yeah, this is definitely not the end at all. I think of the Ipe Mizuhara story, at least on here. We'll definitely give some updates.
No, I appreciate you did that. I spoke to Mike. Great call bookending this. I told my students today, I'm like, listen, we talk about, in legal classrooms, sports classrooms, whatever, in history classrooms, we talk about the Black Sox scandal, way back when they talk about Pete Rose. I had my students for my first class at Pace. I had them read up and watch the Tim Donaghy documentary, the cheating ref. And I'm like, man, this is the Ipe Mizuhara story. Like, this was really the Shohei Ohtani story. I'm not going to tell the story again because, I am not, because I've done it too much. But I am so shocked that Shohei just got out from this completely unscathed. It is almost unfathomable. And then you think about it, right? Shohei is worth millions. Actually, Shohei is probably worth hundreds of millions, right? And to baseball, he's worth even more than that. The question, I'm joking to you, Mike. Like you said, 7 to 10 years in jail,
Yeah.
right? How much money would you have to be paid to spend 7 to 10 years in jail?
No, I don't know if any man.
Answer
It's
the
a lot of
question.
time. A
Answer the question.
billion, I
How much?
guess. Yeah, like
A
1
bill?
billion
No,
with a B.
no way. No way you would have
For
to be.
that many years,
Listen,
I want to be
listen,
able to
listen,
help
listen,
family,
listen.
friends, their
If
family and
you,
friends.
if you, let's say you worked like a dog for 7 to 10 years, you're not making $1 billion. You have to give yourself a real answer. So let's say the number. You could set your
Yeah, but
family up. You
jail,
could set
the
your
damage.
kids up. Let's say it was like $100 million, right? Or
Mhm.
$75 million, 50, whatever it is. Let's just say that's the number. Okay, you could get out early on parole. You get a lot of good things. Um, in my older age, I try to be fair with these topics. I I think the story that I still view the story that Ipe Mizuhara told ESPN. Um, I, I I just, it's unfathomable to me that ESPN is not pushing that as like the real story is X, and I know we're being told why, but no one really pushing it. I think I'm just not ruling it out. Like I don't believe the Tim Donaghy thing was a rogue ref. Like, I just, that's my personal beliefs. I think it is certainly possible that Ipe is receiving something in order to not testify in any other way. Throw his friend under the bus. I think I think again, on a percentage chance, is it possible that he's being compensated in some other means? Right? Possible, possible. That's all I'll say. I'm just not. I'm not ready to. I'll die on this hill that the story just disappeared way too quickly. And I am a San Francisco Giants fan, and I traditionally do not like the Dodgers, but I was just shocked at how quickly this story disappeared, and it's like unfathomable to me that like Shohei just got off the hook completely. It's almost impossible, but it's exactly what happened, Mike. It's a perfect crime. It's a perfect crime. It's crazy how you can get away with the crime if you have hundreds of millions of dollars. It's interesting how that works.
Yeah, and when you're the most valuable, probably American athlete to your league.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, Mike, that'll do it. I'm late for my call. You're the best. Appreciate you joining us every week on Conduct Detrimental. And yeah, see you next time on another lovely episode of the Sports Law Podcast, Conduct Detrimental.